I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we're joined by Aubree Adams, host of the podcast, It's Just Pot, What's the Problem?, and founder of Every Brain Matters. Aubree's been sounding the alarm of the growing health concern related to marijuana use, especially the risk to children, teens, and young adults. She earned the 2021 Moxie Award from the Drug Free America Foundation, and her op-ed was published in USA Today. Aubree, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi, Peter. Thanks for having me on. Like you said, my name is Aubree Adams. I am a mom from ground zero of the marijuana drug culture expansion movement, Pueblo, Colorado. And back when Colorado legalized marijuana, I did not think it would harm my family and my community, but it did. And so that put me on a path of education to figure out what's really happening here, and advocacy. I could not believe how a town could just be flipped upside down with just one policy, but it did. Marijuana harmed my son and my family and my community. We had marijuana criminal organizations moved into our communities, into our neighborhoods. We had a surge of homeless families, not just individuals, but families come to our community with no resources, no homes, and some of them had children with them. And so as a community, we were shocked. And when I saw my son harmed, it changed me. He became irrational, paranoid. He was repeating things that I did not understand for hours. And he became violent. And one night he was so violent towards his younger brother that his younger brother ran barefoot through the snow to get away from him. And that night, my son tried to end his life. And he was hospitalized. When he came out of the hospital, he was still suicidal. And I took him back to the ER where I was told it's just marijuana. And we were sent home. But my son did not improve. I could not sleep. My son was not in his right mind, and I did not understand what was happening. So I took him back to the ER within a few days, and I begged for help. And this time they did hospitalize him again, but in a different town because there was no available beds for him in our town of Pueblo, Colorado. When he got out of the hospital the second time, he told me he was using dabs. And I had no clue what a dab was. And he said, "Mom, dabs are strong marijuana." And he called them crack weed. And so through my research, I realized dabs are high concentrations of THC that are marketed as medicine and mass produced in our community. And I got angry because what I witnessed with my son changed him forever, and it changed me forever. And fast forward, I developed an organization called Every Brain Matters to provide support for families and resources, and then bridge to advocacy for the families that do want a voice in policy making and education. Because what's happening with these, what I call drug promotional policies, like the legalization of marijuana, is harming our communities and now our country greatly.
It's fascinating. I had the opportunity to be at one of your meetings online not too long ago, and you had people from all over the country. And what you went through is not rare. It's, we always talked about the silent majority in America. And the problem is most parents suffer in silence. I mean, they're dealing with a world that's throwing all these pro-marijuana images. It's saying it doesn't hurt your kids. But you're right there seeing it do tremendous damage to young children. And we know an industry wants to say, well, it's not our responsibility because we don't sanction it for use by kids. So what do as you're stepping into this world trying to protect your children, you have this huge industry that's predicated on something that's highly addictive and dangerous. Is it frustrating to not have a finger to point or somebody to blame or, a neck to put your hands around to say, why are you doing this?
Well, I do blame the marijuana, the predatory for addiction for profit industry, marijuana industry. I do blame the legislators for ignoring us. I work with a whole network of communities and other organizations like Smart Approach to Marijuana, and they now have the Parent Action Network. I work with all of them, and we have spent tremendous amount of hours educating them and alarming them of what's happening. We've even talked to the industry. I've debated the industry by myself. These state sanctioned products, as you called them, thank you for using that word, is geared towards youth use. They make their products look attractive, sexy, normal, like candy, and slim, sexy vapes that taste wonderful, to mask the chemical that's in there that's addicting their brains and causing mental illness. So I do blame them, and I do blame the elected officials for not doing their jobs and protecting the health and safety of our children.
Well, I thank you for speaking out about kids, and we're going to take a short break and continue our conversation with Aubree Adams. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzz and overshared again?
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
that's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're talking with Aubree Adams from Every Brain Matters, about the public health crisis caused by this expansion in marijuana, and in many ways, how it's frustrating to watch so many people get out there and want marijuana, that have time to get on Capitol steps and talk on TV. And parents that are on the front lines recognize that for every one of those people, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of families and kids affected negatively. How does this work into how you process being in a situation like this as a mom?
It breaks my heart. It's an unfair fight for families. Families can't compete with this expanding drug culture, with all these lobbyists and advocates that are paid to go wine and dine the governors and the legislators. Parents are at home with their children, working multiple jobs, making sure there's dinner every night, making sure the kids are getting to their activities, making sure they're taking care of themselves, and they cannot afford the time to go advocate and raise their voice at state houses, and let them know that this is harming. And then, once a family is affected by these marijuana products that are legal now, they go into survival mode. They go into crisis mode, and their focus is trying to get their children healthier, because once a child starts using, it's just a short amount of time before the addiction process kicks in, or a psychosis episode might happen. This isn't alcohol. I do not advocate for alcohol use or any other drug use. But, one swallow of an edible, a couple hits off a vape, can cause a psychotic episode, or like severe vomiting or a seizure. These are very dangerous, potent, toxic products. And at that point, the families are just focused on, like, what do we do? How do we get help? Where do we go? We're told it's just marijuana. What's the problem with this? But there's a huge problem. They're watching their children change, and they're watching their children's health be just stripped away. So it's definitely an unfair fight. And that's why, another reason why I developed Every Brain Matters, to give a voice to those families. So the ones that can't show up publicly, maybe they can share their testimony, or they can come on a video with me and share, or they can send a letter to their legislators that we're developing, or a group like Smart Approach to Marijuana, the Parent Action Network. They can get involved and advocate that way to unite our voice and raise our voices.
You know, there's an old adage called where there's fire, there's smoke, but it doesn't always help us. I mean, we see stats like that, you know, there's an increase in suicides of teens at 12 to 17 years of age. And now they're finding out that over 60% of fatalities from teen suicides in that age group have marijuana in their system or have been marijuana users. We're seeing that many of these school violent episodes, from the shooting to other things, these are marijuana users. These are kids that predominantly are marijuana users. And many of them are boys. You know, it tends to affect more boys, maybe a little bit more aggression, a little bit more frustration. So we see this smoke, so to speak. It's there every day. And yet, if I've heard that if you bring this up to legislators, they sort of say, oh, there's no real research or this, but it's coming out all over the place. How come people aren't listening? What do you think?
That's a good point. And we do have the research connecting marijuana to violence on the Every Brain Matters website. So please visit that to read it for yourself and come to your own conclusion. But you are right. You know, these products are targeting young men, and you know, young men are under a lot of pressure, not allowed to be emotional or angry if they're feeling angry. And we have industry people, we have medical people telling them to self-medicate with marijuana and not let them know it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to talk about your feelings. Just mask it with THC. And in the meantime, this THC is causing great damage to their brains where they can't process their emotions. And they are becoming paranoid, or maybe they're starting to hear voices and they're acting out violently. And so what we need to do as a country, and I developed Every Brain Matters to be a unifier so we can all come together, all organizations, all individuals, all drug prevention, anybody who's a stakeholder, come to Every Brain Matters, because what we need to ask is the toxicology reports be made public and the past drug use, the history of the drug use of that person that's committing these violent acts. We need to know if marijuana was involved. Now, I think that the kids that are already having emotional issues, if it weren't for the marijuana use, they probably wouldn't act out violently or as extreme. And that is something we've got to wake up as a country. It has become, we're at the point where it's not even safe to go grocery shopping. You know, the young man who did the shooting in Boulder, Colorado at the King Soopers grocery store, it came out that he has severe schizophrenia and it's untreatable. You know, where's the toxicology report with that young man? I don't know if marijuana was involved, but he's 21. He's living in Boulder, Colorado, where marijuana is king. I would not be surprised if there's not a direct connection there. And I think it was like 10 people lost their lives. So those people lost their lives. That's 10 families that are affected. And everybody else who survived that incident are now traumatized.
Wow, what a powerful point. And we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to ask Aubree to talk about some of the programs she's developed to help families affected by marijuana. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here.
Wait. What?
I can't drive.
Why? My. Oh.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with Aubree Adams from Every Brain Matters, a community of support built on science and lived experience when it comes to marijuana harms. You built quite a network, Aubree, of people, a support system. Tell us a little bit about how that works with you.
Yeah, well, when I would show up to support groups and other families would show up to certain support groups, we were kind of shamed and laughed at. We were told marijuana is not addictive and it's less harmful, and nobody's harmed by marijuana. And we were experiencing the opposite. We were seeing our children drastically harmed by marijuana. And so I realized we needed a place for these families to go where they didn't have to explain what was happening, and they would not be shamed, and that they could have a voice. So I started having online support groups for these families. And so we have what we call a climbers meeting every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. It's an interactive educational group led by professionals where families can come and ask questions and get positive feedback from a professional and from other families that have walked this journey. And then we have a monthly speakers meeting where somebody comes and shares their experience, strength, and hope, recovering from cannabis use disorder, which is addiction from marijuana, or cannabis-induced psychosis, which is when they have a break from reality, or cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome is where people get at toxic levels of marijuana in their body, and they have severe GI issues and can even die from that syndrome. So we create a space to find hope is what we do with those support groups. And
I've heard mentioned by professionals, some of them in Colorado, like Dr. Ken Finn, that for every miracle that any marijuana product has performed based on industry, whether it's hype or truth, we don't know. He said there are thousands of people and young children affected, and that one of the emerging risks, besides mental health correlation that you pointed out, is the use of these products by young pregnant women and the effect on kids. And you walk right into that bias when people say, well, it's only marijuana. But now we see one of the biggest promotions for CBD and THC products going to pregnant women with morning sickness, with not only no evidence that it works, actually a ton of evidence that there's something called fetal marijuana syndrome. And I know, are you running into some of this with some of the parents, grandparents, and young parents in your groups?
So I've had families members call me and say their loved one is pregnant, but they're using marijuana. How can they get them to quit? Stuff like that. And boy, I don't have any answers to that. You got to show up as loving and supportive as you can and educate them that this is causing harm. Can we find an alternative? Can you get help? Can you get support so you quit using these products? And it's so true. The predatory addiction for profit marijuana industry is not only harming youth, they are harming unborn children. In Colorado, 70% of the marijuana shops got caught recommending marijuana to pregnant women. So my mom and I hung baby bibs on the marijuana shops in our community of Pueblo, Colorado, saying, don't hurt our future Colorado kids. So, and that was a campaign developed by One Chance to Grow Up, an organization that I totally support and love the work they're doing and stuff like that. We need to bring campaigns back like that and do it like a unified effort. So they quit doing this. And what floors me even more about this is there's no accountability. How can a person or an industry get away with harming pregnant women and unborn children? It just floors me. I can't understand it. So we need accountability with this industry too.
Well, one expert said that it's not that they don't know the damage, just like the tobacco and alcohol industries did. It's that they're going to profit to the greatest extent they can before they have to shut down those practices. And that's what happened with opioids. They knew they were wrong for a long, long time, and they played multi-billion-dollar settlements, but they earned many, many, many more billions selling it and hurting people. So we see that. Now, are people skeptical enough? Or is this social media got everybody sort of buggered, like the people in your groups? Are they questioning social media, or they don't know what to believe anymore?
I think that disease of denial, and I think the propaganda pumped into our communities, especially through social media, has caused great damage where it is confusing. People don't know whether to believe me, what I'm educating, or what the industry is educating. And so that's why I built the website too. We have a science library on there so they can come in and they can read the facts for themselves. And then I broke down the science too into simple explanations with these pamphlets we have that you can find on the front page at the bottom of the page, about what is addiction to marijuana or cannabis use disorder, what is cannabis-induced psychosis, what is cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, why is marijuana harmful, and not medicine. So that, hopefully people are at least open to reading the facts, because if the facts and the science were going to win the argument, this industry would be held accountable right away. But I think you make a good point, Peter, about how the tobacco industry got away with it, the opioid industry got away with it, and they knew what they were doing. The marijuana industry absolutely knows they are causing great damage and harm, and their products are leading to more addiction, more mental illness, and more violence and crime and homelessness in our country. And they are getting away with it. But voices like ours, Peter's and mine, and we're going to keep raising our voices and get a unified effort and get people submitting lawsuits. And actually we're in touch with a mother who just submitted a lawsuit, and she's keeping pretty private at this point, but this will be one of many that will come forward.
After a short break, we're going to ask Aubree to share some final comments, insights, and inspiration. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
You told me not to talk to strangers. You told me not to cross the street without looking both ways.
You told me not to touch the stove.
You told me not to do drugs.
You told me not to drink and drive.
You gave me so many messages about how to stay safe. Why didn't you keep me safe by properly storing your gun?
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we're talking about the growing health concerns related to marijuana use, especially the risks to children, teens, and young adults. Let's see what insights, advice, and inspiration Aubree has to share. Aubree, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Peter. Well, I think, some of the main points I would love your audience to know is that any marijuana use from a teen or a young adult is a self-destructive behavior that needs a action, that needs a response, not a reaction, but an active, proactive response. So at Every Brain Matters, I teach families how to react to that, how to set boundaries and guidelines, and how to put consequences into that potential destructive behavior. So whether it's drug use or mental illness or something like that, we will provide those resources and support and connection. Because I think with this ever-growing drug culture expansion, families are losing hope, but Every Brain Matters brings back that hope, that you are capable as a parent to parent a child that might be using marijuana, and that child who is using is capable of learning that is a self-destructive behavior and that they can take good care of themselves and get better. So I want to bring that back into the equation with the resources and support groups that we've developed, and let them know that there's hope for the future for better drug policy making, and the families that want to bridge over to advocacy can, and we have a place for them.
I know you're doing a great job there. And I also know that for every person that's dealing with substance use disorder and mental health, there are many, many other people, caring people, family members around them. So the effect is pretty widespread. But so often I hear parents on the show and in the community say, what could I have done differently? You know, what advice do you give to the parent that hasn't had the problem yet, but maybe senses there might be an issue? Or what alarm should they raise? You know, for those of parents where they're already dealing with a problem, they've probably done the best they knew how and the best they could. But that also opens the door to sharing something with parents that haven't been through the worst of it yet. What advice would you share for those parents?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Parents do the best they can with the resources and knowledge they have. So that's part of what I do too. One of my best presentations is how to parent a child that is using marijuana. I give them tools and techniques on how to respond, and what the best thing a parent can do is just keep asking those questions, reach for support, different support groups. It doesn't have to necessarily just be Every Brain Matters. There's all different kinds of parent support group, family support groups. So first of all, get connected with a professional. That's step one. You know, get guidance from a professional, a counselor that can start supporting you and guiding you. Second, get connected with a community. Not just a community where you think is going to fix your kid, but a community that's going to support you as a parent too and help guide you. And you'll get connected to families that have walked this path before you, and they'll share their experience, strength, and hope with you. And you take what you think will work for your family and leave the rest, and get educated, because with education, it empowers us as families to make good decisions and to not be manipulated by the propaganda that's out there. So that's what I encourage families to do. Get educated, find support, and know that we know what you're going through is very difficult and painful, but we can find peace and hope through this process. So you can show up for your kiddo the best way you can. You can remain healthy. And so, which is so important that you take care of yourself through this, because sometimes the outcomes are not what we want them to be, but many times the outcomes can be very positive. And so we want to link arms with you and give you that support and love.
Thank you so very much for sharing your story. And I hope people get a chance to go to your website, learn more about you. Thank you all for watching today. Check out our website at healthyiowa.org and keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.